There was a beautiful radiation cloud in the area of where the nuclear ignition took place. Beautiful in color, crimson, most beautiful crimson I've ever seen. Shaped kind of like a donut with white clouds coming out of the center, rolling over the outside of the donut and back up through the center, and just kept like it was boiling up there in the sky.
My name is Erik Skindrud. I'm here with Ray Calloway, Huntington Beach resident, who was present for a live nuclear test at the Nevada test site in April 1952. The shot was codenamed Charlie, part of the Tumbler Snapper series, which detonated 8 nuclear devices over the Nevada test site. It was a 31 kiloton test, that's over twice the explosive power of the Hiroshima or Nagasaki blasts. Here's a view of Charlie test from about 10 miles away. Calloway and his men, the men with him, were about 1/3 this distance. I'm interested in what wisdom Ray Calloway has to teach us. What was it like to feel the heat of a nuclear explosion? What could these devices, these weapons, do to human beings and the environment? It's an important question. As journalist Abe Streep wrote recently, we've forgotten how to think about nuclear weapons, and that in itself may be a big danger. As the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has said, the risk of these weapons being used has never been greater than it is today.
It was instantly. We felt the heat and the light, but it was 13, 14 seconds or so before we felt this and saw the dirt and the earth that came along with the blast wave. I just couldn't go back down in the foxhole, but I experienced a lot of dirt and dust in my face as a result.
But and you were wearing no kind of protective gear, no mask, not even a surgical mask or anything.
No mask. We did have a film badge on that would measure the radiation that we received, and I never received any information as to what that film badge disclosed.
Let me ask you. I think it's well documented that many men present for this and other tests did experience illness, cancer, and died earlier than they would have presumably died normally. Did you keep in touch with any buddies from that period, or did you hear about anyone you knew there that later got sick?
I did not.
Okay.
But I personally have not experienced anything that I could point to and say, "Oh, I got that burned from the exposure to atom bomb blast, or I got some of my eyesight taken away from the dirt that hit me in the face." But I don't have any of that.
Were you ever put on a list or a registry of atomic veterans that and informed that you would be eligible for special benefits if you got sick?
I think it was at the time the Atomic Energy Commission did notify me that told me that if I felt I had any ill effects from that test, that I should report immediately to the nearest Veterans Administration hospital.
And when did that happen? Shortly after the test, or years later?
I think it was years later.
Okay. Do you recall what decade that might have been?
I think I have it in some notes here. But,
okay.
But I would say within the first decade, anyway.
Okay. Interesting.
Right. And anyhow, I don't feel I've suffered any ill effects from that test. My eyesight is still pretty good. Hearing maybe could use a little help, but it's something that I experienced. I feel I was a young soldier who said, "Hey, bring it on! I'm ready." That's the way we were. We were trained to be tough if we could, as we could be, because we were being trained to go to Korea and fight in the Korean War, and so they were called battle indoctrination, prepare us to go into a war zone.
That's an interesting point, Ray, because in preparing for this interview, I viewed a Department of Defense film about the Tumbler Snapper test series, and it was clear from that part of what they wanted to learn was the psychological reaction of troops. Would they be intimidated or even, refuse to maybe take place in the event? Did you see any of your fellow soldiers, I don't know, scared or panicking in any way? Anything like that?
I did not.
Okay.
And we were all individually interviewed and recorded. Our interview was recorded. It was the military that did it, and so that recording was around for some time afterwards, but I don't know what happened to it.
Do you recall right before, I guess, zero time, they called it, were you mostly, scared, terrified, or curious as to what was going to happen?
Curious.
Okay.
Very, very curious. Yeah.
I can imagine. Let's see, a couple of facts about the Charlie test. Interestingly, it was an airdrop. This was not a device placed on a shot tower like so many other tests, but
Correct.
I believe these were B-36 aircraft. It was an enormous 6-engine bomber.
I was corrected on that.
Yeah?
I'd misidentified the airplane. It turned out it was a B-50, and I didn't know too much about aircraft at the time, but I think I identified it as a B-29 in the notes that I have in here.
At the time, did you know that it was an airdrop?
Yes.
Interesting. Could you see the aircraft pass overhead?
I did.
Could you see the device fall from the... I guess by that time, you had better have yourself down in that foxhole.
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah. I mean, given that there was fire, there were grass fires ignited behind the point where you were at.
Right.
If any part of your body had been exposed to the initial radiation of the blast, you could have been severely injured.
Could be.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, fascinating. In the film Oppenheimer, during the Trinity test, I think it takes over a minute between the initial flash and for the blast wave to pass over the observers.
Right.
I'm guessing that was less than completely accurate, even though the distance they were observing from may have been different. I think you estimated about 14-15 seconds.
That's what I estimated it to be. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, some other questions. So you had no direct radiation from the initial blast, but you could feel the heat kind of indirectly coming into the foxhole. Is that right?
Oh, the heat was intense and light. Yeah.
Were your eyes closed? Did you have any kind of goggles?
I did close my eyes. I don't know about the rest of this, soldiers, but I did.
Did you have any kind of goggles or protective gear on?
No.
What was, if you had to pick out one thing that was the most surprising about the experience, what would it be?
Probably the fact that the difference between the speed of light and the speed of sound, which I didn't really think too much about at the time. Here was an enormous explosion and no sound. How come no sound? It turns out it was almost 4 miles away. It takes, you try to figure out yourself, how long does it take for someone that shoots a gun for the sound to get to you if they shoot the gun 4 miles away? It takes seconds. And so that's what happened in my case. I was just amazed that I didn't feel and sense an enormous blast wave at the instant of the blast.
Remember that the video camera is over there, so try to get
right.
turned toward it.
Right.
Let's see. Do you have any plans to speak to school groups, or have you ever spoke to school groups or any kind of? You mentioned recently at the Senior Center this year, 2023. Have you ever done any talks like that before?
Never. No one has asked me to make a presentation. I do have flip charts that I prepared for the presentation to the Board of Trustees at the Senior Center, and they're still available if someone were to ask me. I think I probably bored them with numbers because I shouldn't have been so number conscious. But hey, we had this bomb that was dropped roughly several thousand feet in the air, and we were 3.8 miles from ground zero when that took place. I was throwing numbers like that around, and I think I bored the people, and it was been better if I had said, how many of you have ever been exposed to an atom bomb blast? And get them interested that way. It might have been a more entertaining talk rather than 3.8 miles, 30 kiloton bomb.
Right.
Numbers. I think I bored them with that, and so. But no, I haven't been asked to reveal my experiences.
So it's interesting. A lot of people are under the impression that the risk of a nuclear event or nuclear war is much less today than it was during the Cold War. In fact, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, a respected group that publicizes their so-called doomsday clock, recently turned the clock back to only 90 seconds from midnight. That's considered the most risk-prone rating that they've had in the over 50-year history of the clock. So the experts believe that we are under grave threat to this day, or currently. Anyway, do you think the possibility of using nuclear weapons today is more or less scary and terrible as a result of your experience? Or did actually seeing an explosion like this make you maybe fear it less? Any thoughts like that?
Right. It is a scary weapon, and I think that as unfortunate as it may seem, that it makes it more likely that they will be used at some point in the future, because of the tests like I went through that shows, hey, they can use that on the battlefield, and if the troops are trained in it. That was the purpose of our exercise. It was to prove to the world, because they had reporters there from all over the world, 10 miles away from ground zero, that were recording what was happening. They were watching us as we came out of our foxholes, went through ground zero, and they were recording this, and the world became aware that, hey, these people have, the United States has people trained in the use of tactical nuclear weapons. They've actually done exercises where they've used actual nuclear weapons, and soldiers have taken part in those exercises, and now they have experience and know that they can use them on the battlefield.
To me, it was kind of an awesome thing to learn that this was an airdrop, and you were depending on the skill of that aircrew
Yes.
to place that device where expected, because if they were off a little bit by like as little as a mile, 2 or 3, you would have been surely incinerated.
We've been wiped out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That. Yeah. That's very true.
Thanks to YouTube users Fish Muffin and Blue Ford Focus, what was a piece of faded film stock has been transformed into what may be one of the most startling and emotionally impactful visual documents of the atomic age. This is Operation Tumbler Snapper, Shot Charlie. April 22nd, 1952. This is what it was like to be up close to a 30 kiloton nuclear detonation.